20 grams of one Chinese tea sold at auction for 208,000 RMB, worth more than gold by weight. The real stories behind these 18 teas are absolutely insane. A Scottish spy who faked his entire identity to steal an empire, and a Japanese tea that was quietly going extinct before TikTok broke the global supply chain. Green tea is where this starts. Green tea. Green, white, yellow, oolong, black, and pu-erh all come from the same plant. The only thing that changes is how long the leaves oxidize before someone stops them. Green tea stops it almost immediately. The most famous version is Longjing, Dragon Well, grown around West Lake in Hangzhou. Farmers pan-fire the leaves in iron woks within hours of picking, which kills the enzymes and locks in that grassy taste. Real Longjing leaves are flat and sword-shaped, and counterfeits flood the global market every spring. The part nobody talks about happened in the 1800s. Chinese exporters were caught dyeing green tea with Prussian blue and gypsum to make it look brighter for European buyers. The British were drinking poison and had no idea, until a Scottish botanist named Robert Fortune exposed the whole operation. That name is about to come back in a very different context. White tea. White tea is the same camellia plant, left almost completely alone. Workers pluck the youngest buds before they unfurl, wither them in sunlight, and dry them. That is the whole process. The flagship is Baihao Yinjin Silver Needle from Fujian province in southern China. 1 kilogram takes around 30,000 hand-picked buds, all from a window of a few days in early spring. Pick a day too late and the tea is ruined. White tea barely existed outside China until the 1990s, when wellness magazines decided it was the healthiest thing on earth. A tea Chinese farmers had been drinking quietly for centuries became a $100 luxury item in Whole Foods overnight. The farmers profited. The knowledge stayed intact. That is not always how this story goes. The next tea produces only around 500 kilograms a year on the entire planet, and it is quietly going extinct. Yellow tea. Yellow tea is the unicorn of the Chinese tea world. Almost nobody outside China makes it because almost nobody outside China drinks it. The most famous version is Junshan Yinjin, grown on Junshan Island in Dongting Lake in Yunnan province. The island measures less than 1 square kilometer, and that entire island produces around 500 kilograms of authentic Junshan Yinjin per year. That is the whole planet's supply. What makes it yellow is a step called men huang, sealing yellow. After the leaves are heated, they get wrapped in cloth while still warm and damp and left to slowly turn yellow over hours. That single extra step kills the grassy bite of green tea and gives it a mellow, almost sweet finish. The process is so labor-intensive that fewer producers attempt it every year, and most of the annual harvest, reportedly, goes straight to Chinese officials and visiting diplomats. The tea is dying not because demand collapsed, but because the people who know how to make it are running out. The next Chinese tea broke an auction record nobody believed possible: oolong tea. Oolong sits between green and black. The leaves get partially oxidized, sometimes 10%, sometimes 70%. The king of oolongs is Da Hong Pao, Big Red Robe, grown on the cliffs of the Wui Mountains in Fujian. 6 original mother bushes are still alive on a cliff face called Julongke, and they are over 350 years old. In 2005, 20 grams of tea from those 6 bushes sold at auction for 208,000 RMB, over $1 million per kilogram, worth more than gold by weight that year. The Wuishan government insured those 6 bushes for 100 million RMB and banned any further commercial harvest in 2006. The final batch was preserved as a cultural artifact in Beijing. Every Da Hong Pao you have ever bought is a clone, propagated from cuttings of those original bushes. The next Chinese tea ages like wine, and a single stack of cakes recently sold for over $1 million. Pu-erh tea. Pu-erh is the only Chinese tea that gets better with age. It comes from Yunnan province, made from a large leaf variety of camellia. Sheng pu-erh is raw and ages slowly over decades. Shu pu-erh is artificially fermented in a faster process invented in the 1970s. The auction market is where things get genuinely insane. In November 2019, 7 cakes of 1920s Tong Xinghao pu-erh sold in Hong Kong for 8.4 million Hong Kong dollars, around $1.08 million. In December 2021, Sotheby's Hong Kong held its first ever dedicated tea auction, with one 1900s Chen Yun Hao tea cake estimated between 900,000 and 1.2 million Hong Kong dollars. Top-tier aged pu-erh has outperformed Hong Kong and US stock indices over the last 50 years, returning roughly 14% compound annual growth. The next tea triggered a heist so audacious that historians still argue about whether to call it espionage or theft. The answer is both: black tea. Black tea is fully oxidized camellia, and the original came from the same Wuyi Mountains. The most famous Chinese black tea is Keeman from Anhui Province. Sweet, slightly smoky, the backbone of English breakfast blends for over a century. For roughly 200 years, China was the only country on Earth producing it. The British were drinking thousands of pounds of black tea every year with no idea how it was made. Chinese farmers guarded the process as a state secret. London was running out of silver paying for it, which helped trigger the Opium Wars. By the 1840s, the British East India Company had a plan. They were going to steal the entire industry. They hired Robert Fortune, the same botanist who exposed the poison dye scandal, paid him £500 a year, 5 times his previous salary, and sent him into mainland China in disguise. Assam tea. Robert Fortune shaved his head, sewed on a mandarin queue, dressed as a Chinese official from a distant province, and walked into the interior of China in 1848. He was risking execution daily. Tea seeds and processing had been Chinese state secrets for centuries. Over 3 years, he documented exactly how green and black tea were made, confirmed both came from the same plant, and smuggled out roughly 13,000 plants, 10,000 seeds, and 8 skilled Chinese tea workers, all bound for British India. He transported the seedlings in sealed glass containers called Wardian cases. Most of his Chinese plants died on the journey, but the knowledge and the workers built the entire Indian tea industry from scratch. The seeds went into the ground alongside a native Indian variety called Camellia sinensis assamica, which thrived in the hot, humid lowlands of Assam. Assam tea today is bold, malty, and strong enough to stand up to milk. Historians have called Fortune's mission the greatest single act of corporate espionage in human history. The next region the British developed produced a completely different cup: Darjeeling tea. Darjeeling sits in the eastern Himalayan foothills of West Bengal, sometimes 6,000 feet up in the clouds. The tea grown there is made mostly from the Chinese variety Fortune smuggled, not the native Indian one. The cool air, altitude, and mountain mist give Darjeeling its famous floral, almost wine-like character. In 2004, Darjeeling became the first Indian product ever to receive geographical indication status. In 2011, the EU granted it protected geographical indication too. Only 87 registered gardens covering roughly 17,500 hectares can legally call their product Darjeeling. The second flush, harvested in May and June, has a unique musky note called muscatel. That flavor exists because leafhopper bugs bite the leaves and trigger a chemical defense response that pumps up compounds called linalool oxides. Those famous Darjeeling notes come from insect damage. Not every drink on this list is even technically tea. Kombucha. Kombucha is fermented sweetened tea made by adding a SCOBY, symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, to brewed tea and sugar. After 1 to 2 weeks of fermentation, you get a tangy, slightly fizzy, low-alcohol drink. The global kombucha market is worth somewhere between $3 and $5 billion in 2025. The marketing copy will tell you kombucha is 2,000 years old, traced to Manchurian China in 220 BC. Food historians call that fiction. There is no documented evidence kombucha existed in ancient China at all. The first reliable scientific record is a 1913 paper by Russian biologist A.A. Bashinskaya, who studied SCOBY cultures at the Medical Institute in St. Petersburg. Real consumption is documented in late 19th century Russia and Ukraine. So the most American health drink of the 2020s is a recent Eastern European invention with an invented Chinese backstory. The next fermented drink has the same problem with its origin story, and it's even more elaborate: Jun tea. Jun tea is a fermented drink made with green tea and raw honey instead of black tea and sugar. It is generally lighter, more floral, and less acidic than kombucha, and it commands a significant premium in health food stores because of the story attached to it. That story goes like this. Jun is an ancient Tibetan or Himalayan drink made by monks, passed down for centuries through oral tradition. Food writer Sandor Katz, who has spent decades researching fermentation history globally, has described Jun as a relatively recent divergence from the kombucha family tree, with no credible historical documentation behind the Tibetan origin claim, which means two adjacent drinks on the refrigerated shelf at your local co-op share the exact same invented ancient provenance. The marketing is indistinguishable from the product. Chamomile tea. Chamomile is not technically tea, it is a tisane, an herbal infusion with no camellia in it. The dried flowers come from Matricaria chamomilla, the German variety, or Chamomillum nobile, the Roman one. Ancient Egyptians used chamomile 3,000 years ago, dedicating it to the sun god Ra and using it in embalming pharaohs. The active compound is a flavonoid called apigenin, which binds to the same GABA receptors that sleeping pills like Valium target. That is part of why a cup of chamomile genuinely does calm you down. The effect is real, just variable. The apigenin dose in one tea bag shifts wildly between brands depending on how the flowers were dried and stored, which is why your favorite calming blend might suddenly stop working. You are not imagining it. You are dealing with an unstandardized botanical supply chain. The next tisane only grows in one mountain range on the entire planet, rooibos. Rooibos grows in exactly one place on Earth, the Cederberg mountain range in South Africa's Western Cape. Every attempt to cultivate it in Argentina, China, Australia, and the United States has failed. The plant, Aspalathus linearis, refuses to thrive anywhere else. It is naturally caffeine-free, loaded with antioxidants, including a unique compound called aspalathin, and was traditionally harvested by the Khoi and San peoples for centuries before colonial farmers commercialized it. In November 2019, after a 9-year legal fight that began with a biopiracy case against Nestlé, an industry-wide benefit-sharing agreement was signed, paying the Khoi and San a 1.5% farm gate levy on every kilo of rooibos sold, the first deal of its kind anywhere on Earth. In May 2021, the EU granted rooibos protected designation of origin status, making it the first African food product ever to receive EU PDO. The next tisane has serious clinical proof behind it: hibiscus tea. Hibiscus tea is made from the deep red calices of Hibiscus sabdarifa, and it is one of the only herbal infusions on Earth with a real placebo-controlled trial behind a health claim. In 2010, researchers at the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging at Tufts University published findings in the Journal of Nutrition. 65 adults with mildly elevated blood pressure drank 3 cups a day for 6 weeks. The hibiscus group's systolic blood pressure dropped by 7.2 millimeters of mercury. The placebo group dropped 1.3. The study was registered with clinicaltrials.gov, the gold standard for trial transparency. That tart cranberry-colored drink you order at Mexican restaurants, agua de Jamaica, is measurably moving blood pressure. The next plant on this list got entire countries legally addicted to it: yerba mate. Yerba mate is made from Ilex paraguariensis, traditionally drunk from a hollowed gourd through a metal straw called a bombilla. In Argentina, yerba mate is the legally designated national infusion. A law that passed in 2013 made it official. Uruguay has the highest per capita consumption on the planet, around 10 kilograms per person per year. Paraguay's law number 4,261 in 2011 declared tereré, the iced version, national beverage and cultural patrimony. UNESCO inscribed tereré on the Intangible Cultural Heritage List on December 17, 2020. In Rio Grande do Sul, a 2003 state law made chimarrão the official symbol drink. Yerba mate is the only beverage on this list written directly into the law books of 4 separate countries. The next tisane is so common that almost nobody notices the chemistry going on inside their cup: peppermint tea. Peppermint is a natural hybrid of watermint and spearmint, scientific name Mentha piperita. And it is not technically tea either. What it has is menthol, which acts directly on the smooth muscle of your gut. In a 1997 randomized placebo-controlled trial published in Alimentary Pharmacology and Therapeutics, enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules improved abdominal pain, distension, stool frequency, and flatulence in patients with IBS. The brewed tisane is much weaker than the concentrated oil. The clinical evidence applies mainly to capsules, not your mug. But the menthol still reaches your digestive tract in meaningful amounts, when you drink it warm, which is why peppermint tea has been used as a post-meal digestive for centuries across cultures. Peppermint is caffeine-free, and in the Maghreb, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, mint tea is not a health supplement. It is the central ritual of hospitality. Refusing a glass is a social offense. Accepting it is an agreement to sit, slow down, and talk. No other drink on this list carries that kind of social weight in its home region. The most dramatic supply crisis on this list is what comes next: matcha. Matcha is shade-grown Japanese green tea ground into an ultra-fine powder. The whole leaf gets consumed, not just an infusion. It arrived in Japan in 1191 when Zen monk Isai brought tea seeds and Song dynasty preparation methods back from his second trip to China. Sen no Rikyu spent his lifetime, the 400 years after Isai, codifying the tea ceremony before being ordered to commit seppuku in 1591 by the warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi. The last act of a man who built an entire philosophy around stillness and a bowl of tea was to die by his own hand at the command of a warlord. Even the history of matcha is dramatic. Now, it is at the center of a supply crisis nobody saw coming. In 2024, Japanese green tea exports hit a record 36.4 billion yen, roughly $250 million US. In May 2025, Kyoto Tencha auction prices jumped 170% year over year to over 8,200 yen per kilogram. In October 2024, the two biggest producers, Murukyu Koyamaen and Ippodo, publicly suspended sales to new wholesale customers worldwide. The crop takes decades to scale. A tea bush needs years before its first harvest, and the shading infrastructure, the stone mills, the hand sorting, none of it can be rushed. TikTok turned a centuries-old craft product into a global commodity overnight, and the supply chain simply has no mechanism to respond at that speed. Matcha is not the only Japanese tea worth knowing. Hojicha. Hojicha is roasted Japanese green tea, usually made from bancha or older sencha leaves plus the stems, roasted at around 200 degrees Celsius. That roasting drives off most of the caffeine. A standard 250 milliliter cup contains around 7.7 milligrams, compared to 20 to 40 in sencha and 60 to 70 in matcha. The origin is accidental. In 1920s, Kyoto, a tea merchant, had a stockpile of unsold bancha leaves going nowhere. He roasted them at high heat, trying to salvage something. What came out was toasty, sweet, almost coffee-like, and completely different from anything else on the Japanese tea market. He had solved an inventory problem and invented a category. It is the tea Japanese parents give their kids at dinner because it will not keep them up. It is what hospitals in Japan serve patients who cannot handle stimulants. The drink with the most modest origin story on this list turns out to have the most practical daily life. This next tea is the exact opposite of casual: gyokuro. Gyokuro means jade dew, and it is the highest grade of Japanese loose-leaf green tea on the planet. For roughly 20 days before harvest, the bushes get covered with woven mats blocking 70 to 90% of sunlight. The plant slows its photosynthesis and starts pumping out chlorophyll and an amino acid called L-theanine. L-theanine pairs with caffeine to produce what researchers call calm alertness, focused, without the coffee jitters. Gyokuro is less than 1% of total Japanese tea production. The shading technique was perfected around 1835 by Kahei Yamamoto, the sixth of the Yamamoto-yama Tea House, a family business founded in 1690 that is still operating today. There is a lot more food history where that came from. Every coffee bean explained the same way is up next. Don't miss it.